What's going on today, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Plugin Police. I'm your host, Mobile Hater. Today, I'll be ruining my chances of ever getting on 4 producers, 1 sample. I'll be reviewing Andrew Huang's Flip Sampler. It recently released for the Android. Yeah, Broke Boy has an Android. Now, I will say I have some experience with FL Mobile, Koala, and I've also tried BandLab at one point. Yeah, I know. Don't ask. So I'll be explaining to you guys what it is, the good things about it, the bad things about it, and then I'll give you guys my conclusion. Flip is a sample-based mobile music studio for iOS and Android designed for a fast and intuitive workflow. Import your own sounds via AirDrop or the Files app, or record sounds directly with your device's microphone or a connected iOS interface. As soon as you record a sound, it's available to be played on drum pads as well as being mapped across a keyboard. Sounds can be subtly shaped or entirely transformed using the built-in effects and easy-to-use editing tools. Flip Sampler is $9.99. You can sample anything you want with the phone's microphone. It has some pretty interesting automation features. It can do a lot of things, but it's still limited to 9 samples, I should say, which is, that part's not so good. Automation is probably one of the best parts about it. So one of the good things for me so far is I haven't seen it crash once. I'm using a Samsung S20 FE. I really like the randomize button. I think that's, randomize buttons I feel like are pretty useful, at least for me specifically. The pitch detection is a good feature. Although I will say I don't think I've had it work once properly the entire time I used it. Now the automation is definitely one of the most unique and capable features that you get with this. I really like that part about it. The only thing is, since you're limited to 9 sounds, it's kind of hard to figure out what the point of using automation is then. I'd rather have the ability to add more sounds than the ability to automate just 9 of them. And that's basically what you're sacrificing by getting this instead of Koala. The automation does function beautifully though. You just draw in your automation curve and you can loop the automation differently when you're doing it on different parameters. You can automate the volume at a 1 bar loop and then have, maybe the frequency of the filter being automated at like a 8 bar loop. The arrangement and patterns also function pretty well too. The performance tab is kind of cool. I do like the way it functions. It's a bit overrated in my opinion though. It only has 4 effects on it, if you can even call them effects. One of them being random, the other being pitch, reverb, and then filter. So it's just some basic effects. One thing I do really like about this though is how when you snap one of them, it'll snap back into place, which is pretty ideal for performing. So overall, this mode could be useful in some sort of multi-device performance setup. One really cool feature that it has is when you use the randomize function, it'll randomize things within the notes you've already played. It won't add any notes not in the scale. So this should stop you from adding anything out of key, unless you're playing in a non-diatonic song. There's definitely some cool features with this thing. I like the Ableton Link feature. I like the ability to have it play a different velocity or a different pitch depending on where you hit on the pad. And now to talk about the problems with this. And I feel like there's a moderate amount of problems. There were more problems originally, but they did patch out a few of them. So first off, you're only limited to 9 sounds per project. Even if you're just making a basic beat, you could run out of sound space. In most of the beats I made, I didn't even have space to add some sort of lead sound. Now without sacrificing FX or percussion or something of the sort, there's definitely no room for layering on this app as well too. It's not that it's not possible to make a good beat with 9 sounds, but it's going to limit you from making a whole subsection of more complex types of beats. It would be a lot better if you could add more rows of the sounds, or maybe if the limit was higher, like 12, 15, 18. Yeah, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense that you can have 16 patterns, but only 9 sounds, and there's also automation, but again, there's only 9 sounds. Kind of like being able to fly a jet plane, but not being able to run. Now, for anyone out there experiencing latency issues and you've never used a mobile phone making app before, it's definitely your Bluetooth headphones. The next issue for me was that I felt like the samples that it came with were pretty not good. Just really stock and default sounding. Nothing you really want to use. Not that they're not usable, but they're just really meh. Originally, one of my criticisms was that when you import samples, you have to add them in one by one, but they just released an update while I was working on this video that made importing samples much quicker. It's still one by one, but it takes you back to where you were after you import the sample, so you can click one, then another, etc. There's definitely also some issues with the way project handling is done. I accidentally overridden one of my projects without even getting a confirmation. I also feel like the copy paste functionality is not the most intuitive. You can definitely figure it out with some trial and error or looking up a tutorial online. There's also no flam option like FL Studio for anyone who's trying to make hi-hat rolls. I'm not sure what else Flam would really be good for. There's also no lock to key option like FL Mobile has, and that can be a pretty detrimental thing, especially while using your phone. There's also no automatic triplet grid, so you're gonna have to shift that around if you're trying to do something of that sort. The swing function is also in a strange place. It's gonna be in your settings, right by where the tempo is, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I just feel like it shouldn't really be in the overall settings. Another problem I ran into this is the undo function only works within your project. For instance, I actually deleted one of my sample folders, and this was a lot more painful to bring it back in due to the fact that when I was working on this originally, they hadn't changed it to where you could import samples a lot quicker. When I pressed undo, it just undid stuff within the project, didn't undo me deleting all my samples. There's also no sample looping, so if you record a cool sound and want to make a synth out of it, or you just want to just loop something for any reason of the sort, that's not happening. There's also no time stretch, which would be really useful for loops or just getting something to fit with the tempo you're currently working at. And loops would be really useful because you only have 9 sound slots. So if you could slide a loop into one of those, that would make a lot of room to do other things. I mean, maybe I'm just asking for a lot here, but you can do this with other apps like Koala. So I don't really feel bad asking for these things, but I would also like sample slicing. I'm not sure if I said this earlier, but you can only play in 4/4. I found adjusting the pitch of a sample really painful because it doesn't snap to the even semitones. So I'll often drag it to like 2.1, 2.2 or something. I'm just like, oh, fuck it, that's close enough. Because trying to get it to exactly -2 or -3 or whatever I'm trying to get it to can be pretty difficult. I'll play you guys some of the beats I made with this. Pretty much all of them were like house. I don't know, I just found house easier to make with this sort of app. A lot of what I used in these beats were my own custom sounds or random samples that I had on my computer. Overall, I feel like Flip Sampler is pretty good. It has potential to be a lot more though, in my opinion. Especially when there's such great competitors on the market as Koala. In some ways, I think this is better than FL Mobile. In some ways, I think it's worse than FL Mobile. But overall, I still prefer Koala the most out of all 3 of them. BandLab, that one's in the trash. That one's just hanging out in the trash can. I'm gonna give Flip Sampler a 6.5 out of 10. It's far from bad, but it's far from perfect as well too. I think really the biggest problem is that you're limited to 9 sounds. So what do you guys think of Flip Sampler or any sort of phone DAW, making beats on your phone? Let me know what your favorite is in the comments. I've always thought making beats on your phone is really stupid. I still think it is kind of stupid, but sometimes I'm in long car rides, but it is truly exhilarating to use it while driving. Make sure to check out my second channel, my Twitter, my Twitch, Discord. I'll see you guys in the next video. I mean, having to import samples one by one is like a CIA torture tactic.
Bang Incorporated.